Joshua Perry, former Ohio State captain, national champion, Jake Butt, Michigan tight end. You guys co-star in a show together over on Stadium, Red Corner, Blue Corner. But first of all, thank you both for coming. And look at this. We Buckeyes and Wolverines can share a room together this week. It's great. It's a good lesson for everyone to learn.
It's a great lesson. This is one of my great friends. We'll be friends up until kickoff, and then in between then and the end of the game might be a little bit contentious, but overall excited.
I can tell he's getting a little fiery this week. The temperature's getting turned up a little bit.
So let's start by talking about what this week is like, as a player, but obviously also as an alum. I mean, it is a very special time. How different did it feel when you were preparing to play in that game? Like, obviously, people are going to have the countdown clocks and there's just extra energy. But what was that like as a player?
I mean, it really you can't really quantify it, or it's hard to really put into words, but you still go to class on Monday. You still have meetings in practice, but there is a completely different energy in the air. Urban Meyer, I thought, said a great quote today in talking about the game. He's like, it's not just that Saturday. It's not just that week or that month. He's like, this is a lifestyle choice. This is a life choice. It's ingrained into your DNA. And I think that perfectly describes it. Everything just gets turned up a notch. There's never a week that I practice where I didn't go 100% in all things. But this week, there was something beyond. I use the word spiritual because there was something beyond myself as an individual that we were able to tap into. That's what makes it the best rivalry in sports.
Yeah, I think the emotion is the biggest part about it. There's not another game on the schedule in the regular season, at least, that feels this emotional. Even having been a guy who played in the college football playoff, I don't even think that level of emotion matched what we had when we were leading into the game. And I can remember coming in on Sundays for that first practice leading into the week. We'd walk in and on the floor, they would tape down Michigan scout team jerseys so we could get used to walking all over Michigan. It was even to that level for us that we were prepping for the game. And so I think that there's an emotion level, there's an intensity level, and then there's a level of pride as well. And Jake grew up in Columbus just like I did. But when you are somebody who grows up around that rivalry, you understand how much it means to people in the community on either side. And everybody's decked out in their Buckeye gear in Columbus. They're crossing out the M's on any building that's around. All anybody wants to talk about is that game. And so I think there's a pride, too, of your community and of your state being behind you. And this is the one goal that everybody has momentum toward.
Let's talk about the actual games themselves that you guys played in. What were your favorite moments? Or it could be before, after, during. Joshua, I'll start with you because I think you have more positive memories of the outcomes.
Yeah, there are two of them that stand out. The 2013 game, which was the one that came down to the 2-point conversion. Our good pal, Tyvis Powell, came up with the interception there, and he saved my behind because I ran the wrong stunt on a blitz. And had I actually run it right, I would have had a shot to hit Devin, but I didn't. But Tyvis was there to save the day. And I can remember he ran off to the sideline. He had the football that he caught, and one of the Michigan ball boys was trying to get the ball back. And he was doing that, gotcha. Like he didn't want to, and we took it into the locker room. It was great. But 2015 was the one for me, just overall, because the week before that game, we lost to Michigan State, and that ended our hopes of going to the college football playoff in back-to-back years. That was also the last game that I had played in Ohio Stadium, and I was heartbroken. So we came in on Sunday, and Urban was as pale as a ghost, and he looked like he had no plan for how to proceed into the next week. And I'm sitting there with Taylor Decker, who's a captain for us, and Tyvis Powell and Jacoby Bourne were captains as well. And we're just kind of devising a plan of how we want to address our final regular season week. And we went up to Urban and we're like, listen, this can make everything right. We got to get this. And we ended up going on the road, and 42-13 final score. In that one, in a top 10 matchup in Jim Harbaugh's first year, it was the icing on the cake and in the final of 4 wins for me. And I thought that was a pretty impactful one.
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, none of anything I say matters because we didn't win. I mean, just flat out, I never beat them. One was cool. I guess I was a freshman in 2013, and I was having a really great game. I ended up with 5 catches for 85 yards, and that was We had no business being in that game. I think Ohio State was ranked second in the country. And then late in the fourth quarter, down on the goal line, I ran like a little Y hide play and I caught a touchdown to tie it up 35-35. I had a little moment where I'm like, wow, sweet. We're going to beat Ohio State and I'm going to be a part. I can say I helped the team win. Didn't get it done. Probably in 2016, what was really cool, though, is like Patrick Elflein, the offensive lineman for Ohio State. He's like one of my best friends. I was at his wedding. He'll be in my wedding. His mom was my lunch lady. We went to Pickerington, the Pickerington School District all together, and we met at the 50-yard line as captains. And it was like, I got to like shake his hand, and that was a pretty cool moment.
For both you guys, what has changed in this rivalry the last couple of years? Now that, like, Jake, you never won a game, and now you're going on 3 years that Ohio State hasn't won the first year because of COVID. What have you guys seen change as to how Michigan finally got the upper hand here?
A lot's changed, and I think that's what plays into this, because belief is a self-fulfilling prophecy where, like, I mean, there was a couple that 2013 game, there was never a doubt on Ohio State's sideline that they were going to win. They had proved in Columbus that they were going to win no matter what the score was. Ohio State had a stack of proof that they would find a way to win before the final whistle blew. And Michigan had to overcome that belief, and they did it in 2021. I think everyone was nervous in that stadium up until about 30 seconds left. Because there was just a history, man. C.J. Stroud and those receivers, they were going to find a way to win. Well, what changed there is they were able to overcome that belief. Aiden Hutchinson, I still talk to guys today. They talk about his leadership and what he meant to the program. Last year, that in 2021, 95% of the people picked Ohio State to win. Michigan got it done. Last year, it was 50-50. Most people said, well, you beat them once, you got to do it twice. Can you do it on the road? Well, they did it on the road. Now, all of a sudden, I think what's really changed is Michigan has the stack of proof to say, we will win no matter what. And for the first time in a long time, Ryan Day and the Ohio State Buckeyes, like, they have to overcome that psychological aspect where they don't have the proof that they're the better team, that they're capable of winning this game.
Yeah, and I think what goes into that too is the idea of Michigan coming into the year is, for the first time, really, we're hearing them talk about, well, we want to win a national title. What does that encompass? Well, it encompasses the fact that you probably beat your rival along the way there. Like, it is almost a foregone conclusion for them that they are going to do it. Whereas Ohio State, when I was playing there, we had no problem saying that we were going to beat Michigan. We had no problem saying that. And I think guys are a little bit more trepidatious right now because they haven't done it in a little while. And so I think for them, this is for the Buckeyes, a big point to really reshape that narrative about what they feel empowered to say and do. Whereas Michigan has that empowerment right now, and you have to steal it back.
So one big difference this year is no Jim Harbaugh on the sidelines. And, we've all talked about it a lot, endlessly over the last couple of weeks. But I wonder, what this means for Sharon Moore, who's been, forced to step in and be the acting head coach in 2 monster games already this year, but nothing will touch being on the sidelines against Ohio State. And also, like, how much of an impact it is to not actually have your head coach that is your head coach for a reason on the sideline. So Jake, maybe you can start this one.
Well, just like from a sheer, like an operational standpoint, I was told an example of how this matters, like in the Penn State game. So Sharon Moore is the offensive coordinator and the offensive line coach. And when Jim Harbaugh is on the sideline, he handles the head coaching duties. So when Michigan's defense is on the field, Sharon Moore can walk over to the O-line in the offense, take off his headset, and start to converse with them and get feedback and make adjustments. Well, in the Penn State game, of course, he finds out he's the head coach like 24 hours before kickoff, if that. And, Michigan's offense was struggling. So he goes over to the offensive line in the offense, takes off his headset, starts to converse and make that adjustment. And an assistant coach has to come over to him and say, hey, coach, put your headset back on. We need you to make those decisions. Like, what do we do? Are we going to a safe punt or are we going into a punt return? Like, all these little things that are on a head coach, Sharon Moore now has to consider before he can make those adjustments. So that's one piece of it. The other piece is J.J. McCarthy. Struggling. It hasn't looked as good in recent weeks. And, a big reason Coach Harbaugh has had success is because he's been able to communicate to quarterbacks and get the most out of them. I know JJ has a great relationship with Coach Harbaugh. Watch the way they act pregame in years past. Yep. He doesn't have that to lean on. So that's just another factor in this game. Those are two of the biggest reasons. I will say this, where it can help him. Remember, Coach Harbaugh cannot be on the sideline for the game, but he can in that Friday night meeting when they're in the hotel before they play the game. I got to imagine that is going to be a highly emotional meeting for everybody. And Coach Harbaugh is going to say what needs to be said to rally the troops.
So, Joshua, the flip side of this is there's a ton of pressure on Ryan Day, having not won 2 in a row now. He wins against just about everybody else, except this game can put you on as close to the hot seat as you can be when your record's overall what it is.
Yeah.
Even more pressure now that it's going to be an interim head coach on the other sidelines?
I think so. I mean, it's all because of the narrative. Like, imagine you couldn't be Jim Harbaugh. Well, he's not there. You got the boogeyman off in the hotel somewhere watching the game. And then it's like, well, it doesn't matter because you have this dude who has all of 3 games of head coaching experience who just beat you. Like, the narrative's going to go crazy. I also think that it would be foolish for people to try to run him out of town if they lose to Michigan again. And it would not feel good to me. It doesn't sit right with me. I came from a very winning culture. But at the same time, I understand how difficult it is to win. And I don't think that Ohio State losing to Michigan a 3rd time makes them a nationally irrelevant program. And you can look back at last year where they probably should have beat Georgia in the semifinal and then could have been national champs after losing to Michigan. It's the idea for me is where you are in the national landscape as the Big Ten changes and as the college football playoff changes. I think they'll be in the mix. And if you want to look at it like this, and I know Ohio State fans would be like, okay, whatever. But I mean, Jim Harbaugh started off this thing 0-5, right? And there were a lot of people that were like, this guy can't get the job done. Now, all of a sudden, he's the greatest coach ever coached at Michigan. And I think he is a wonderful coach. And it was one game because they had some pretty good teams, but one game that people wanted to define his legacy on. And I think it's a foolish exercise to get into. So there's a lot of pressure. I think there was pressure anyway. It is certainly ramped up, and it would be a bad look if you lose to the interim guy. But I still have confidence in Ryan Day as a coach that could lead this team to a championship at some point.
The pressure builds within the game too, right? So like early, like the first quarter and a half is something we have to watch here, because if Michigan jumps out to a lead, Ryan Day's fully aware of this narrative too. Like the urgency that's created if your team doesn't start fast and is struggling, that forces more decisions from you. And those decisions could either save the day or really hurt you. So the early in the game will just create these little forks in the road because of the pressure. It's a further magnifies the situation for Coach Day.
And to that point, I think the way to take the pressure off if you are that coach early in the game is to get creative and to be aggressive.
Don't wait.
You can't wait. You can't wait. I think you have to try to take control of that game early on. I think it's what Ryan Day tried to do against Georgia last year, and it really worked. And thankfully, there's not a defense full of guys that are falling down in the secondary this year to let teams back in the games like they did a year ago. But that aggression, seriously, that mindset, I think sets the tone early on that you're there to play.
Quick predictions, if we can get you guys on the record with the prediction and why or how the game would be decided.
Ooh. This is a toughie. I haven't had as much time to think about this now.
I mean, it will change, but we're just as we're recording this point in time. Here's your pick.
So I think the way that Michigan's offense has looked the last 2 weeks is a very interesting thing to me. I think Sharon Moore is a phenomenal coach. I think that he does what many great coaches do. We see Lincoln Riley and Ryan Day. Those guys are quarterback-minded guys. So when games get a certain way, all they want to do is spin it around the field. Well, we see Sharon Moore when the game gets a certain way. He likes to lean on that run game a little bit more. And Ohio State's been much better defensively, really good against the run. And so I think they have to pack their big boy pants. But if you can force Michigan to play a game that it doesn't look like they want to play right now, and J.J. McCarthy doesn't look right, whether he's a little bit banged up or it's something different going on, in the game against Maryland, he had 4 passes that hit Maryland defenders in the hands. One of them was intercepted. If you can force that type of performance, I think Ohio State gets a chance. Now, I'm not convinced that they can consistently do that. I think Michigan's going to come out with their best game plan. And so what I really think it hinges on is the idea of what they've been defensively this year, is when they have given up yards, they've done a really good job of not letting people score touchdowns. They've limited the amount of touchdowns people have scored on the ground, which is something that we've seen Blake Corum do to tune of 20 touchdowns this year, right? So I think that there's going to be a battle within a battle there. For Ohio State, the biggest thing offensively is how you can insulate Kyle McCord. And I think that he's played really well. I think Michigan is a good team getting after the quarterback when they blitz. Kyle McCord has to know every blitz package that there is. He has to know where the blitzes are coming from. He has to know where his hot read is, and he has to get the ball out in rhythm. I think if they can do those things, they can make this game a good one. I think that there's an intangible here, and I know I'm rambling a little bit, but I'm going to get to it. The intangible here is Ryan Day has looked very different this year, demeanor-wise. We all made fun of him for yelling at Lou Holtz. Even last year, going back to the Georgia game, I've never seen that man so emotional. And I think that his team feeds off of his emotion. And if he brings that to Ann Arbor, I think that they can sneak out of there with a win.
I agree. Everything Joshua said is going to be, we have to keep our eyes on that. I think if you're Ohio State, I really think TreVeyon Henderson has to have a huge game. I think if Michigan is able to shut down Ohio State's running game, I think McCord's been playing good football, and I think Ryan Day's done a good job. But if Michigan's able to shut down Ohio State's running game, you're going to force McCord to really win a game. And this is where I think that can matter. Ryan Day's done a great job of scheming Marvin Harrison Jr. open. Look at where he lines up all over the field with motions and snaps. Where McCord has struggled, though, is when the picture changes post-snap. Mm-hmm. Notre Dame, that game should have been over because a rat safety read it. It should have picked it off. There's been a few times where that's come up. Michigan does some of that. So there's going to, if Michigan's stopping the run, McCord's going to be looking 18's way. If Michigan can disguise some things and then take advantage of it and intercept the football or make some plays, that could be a big difference. Then it's on Michigan to capitalize. There'll be a few games. The one thing I think is it's going to be a defensive game. We talked about this. I don't know that we're seeing a 30 to 35 score here. It's probably closer to 20.
First to get to 20.
Special teams will play a factor. I think Michigan, in that sense, I think Michigan wins this one by 3 points.
Much better special teams for Michigan, no doubt there. And I think, to your point, if either one of these quarterbacks decides that they want to turn this football over, that might be the difference.
Dangerous. Yep.